Hi, I'm Paris, and I've always had a weakness for sweet things. When that meant sugary treats, it was pretty bad for my health, but this past year I've turned things around. Right now, a sweet treat for me would be a couple dates or a piece of watermelon, but I have kept an eye on the artificial low-calorie, no-calorie sweeteners. For my morning tea, I usually indulge in some stevia and monk fruit sweetener. But earlier this year, I learned about a new sweetener that tasted better than the stevia and monk fruit, but yet had very few calories, was very close chemically to sugar, and actually exists in nature. You can find it in raisins and figs in small amounts. It's called allulose. It's the difference between this and sugar. And the closest I can come is that sugar has a taste sort of like a melody that rises and falls, and it's a complete expression. Whereas with allulose, when you first taste it, it's like the sugar, it does this, but it doesn't have an ending. It doesn't complete, and so it's not as satisfying as having something sweetened with sugar. But whether I think it's a great sugar alternative or not, you will soon be seeing this in everything. The FDA just approved a labeling exemption for allulose. This does have to be listed in the ingredients, and it has to be listed in total carbs, but it does not have to be listed as an added sugar. And its chemical composition is very close to that of table sugar, but there are a couple hydrogen-oxygen swap outs that make it so your body doesn't metabolize it very well. So when you eat allulose, about 75% of it does get absorbed through the intestine into your bloodstream, but then the cells don't treat it like glucose. It doesn't trigger an insulin response, and it floats around a little and then gets excreted by the kidneys, and you end up not metabolizing the sugar. So in effect, as far as your body's concerned, this really only has 1/10 the calories of sugar. And this pack is 6 months old, so for this taste testing and to show you what it looks like, I thought I would get a new pack of allulose, just so it's not a matter of it turns stale, and that's why it doesn't taste quite right. I've got a new pack here. The price is going down on this, mainly because they're now manufacturing it in a new way. So the way allulose is going to be made going forward is an enzymatic process that takes corn syrup, and they add the enzymes to it, and it rearranges the molecules or atoms, and you end up with allulose. So if you're concerned about eating corn that's genetically modified, you might also be a little concerned about eating corn that's enzymatically modified. I'm going to show you what this looks like compared to regular old white table sugar, and I'll taste it in front of you here and see if it's still true that this doesn't have that complete taste for me. I'm then going to show you how much I have to add to tea. And finally, I found a product already out there that uses allulose as its primary sweetener, and it's No Better cookies. Here's the first one. See if you can tell any difference between this and the other. The second one, can you tell which is which? The first one was sugar, the second one is allulose. Again, in terms of physical properties, it's very similar to sugar, so it looks pretty much like sugar. It browns like sugar. It lowers the freezing temperature of liquids that it's in for making ice cream and stuff like sugar. Very, very similar. I think the table sugar, which is this one, it looks a little clumpier just because the bag's been open for a while and the moisture has caused it to clump up, whereas this is from a brand new opened bag of allulose. And now for the taste test, starting with sugar. Taste I know so well. Rise up with sweetness, and then it falls down. Okay, a little palate cleansing with seltzer water here. Now for the allulose. Sweetness rises up, and then doesn't go anywhere. It just hovers and floats there. I guess that's a weird description. Tastes different though than sugar. That's the closest I can come to describing the difference. So allulose doesn't have a bad taste. It tastes sweet and good. It doesn't have a bad aftertaste like stevia sometimes can, but it just isn't as complete a taste. There's something missing. I taste those missing oxygen molecules, something that regular table sugar does have. Just boiled some water. I'm going to make 2 cups of green tea, just plain decaffeinated green tea. Okay, I've got my 2 cups of green tea. Green tea tends to be a little bitter until it's sweetened. And let's start the sweetening. 2 teaspoons table sugar. Should do it for this cup. Here's 1 and 2. Okay, let's give it a try. good. Now for the allulose, I'll start with 2 teaspoons, even though it's supposed to be only 70% as sweet as sugar, so you would think 3 teaspoons ought to do it, but let's see what 2 tastes like. There's 1. And 2. Seems to dissolve just as well as sugar. All right, 2 teaspoons of allulose sweetened green tea. There's a little bit of sweetness to it. Need something more. So let's go for that 3rd teaspoon. Okay, now when you get to this point where you're putting more of another kind of sweetener into your tea than you would regular sugar, you start to think, you know, I hope this turns out to not have any downsides. Okay, 3 teaspoons of allulose should be the same sweetness as 2 teaspoons of regular table sugar. It's sweeter. Let me go back and try this again, see what I'm comparing. It's not there yet. Time to add another one. Number 4. Sweeter. Teaspoon number 5 of allulose. It's getting sweeter and sweeter in a certain way, but not the same way as this. I'm going to do one more. This is the 6th teaspoon of allulose. There's still even more of that kind of sweetness, but it's still not the same as this. But it still doesn't have the same effect. It doesn't have that ending. I think that's why I keep adding more and more to it, thinking eventually I'll get to the same taste as this, that same rising up to a peak and coming down taste. But this never does come down at the end, and so adding more and more, I'm going to get more of that, but there's never any of this. Now the stevia monk fruit sweetener, it tastes quite a bit different from table sugar, but it follows the same pattern. It has that sweetness followed by the fall, and if you have just the stevia, there's also an aftertaste that I don't care for. That's why I do the stevia monk fruit blend. And I'm thinking with the allulose, I'm not a food scientist, so I imagine that rather than using just allulose, probably they'll combine it maybe with some stevia monk fruit, probably in place of some sugar in foods, and they'll do their alchemy to make it taste so delicious and kind of addicting. So to test out foods that food scientists have had a hand in, I'm going to now try out a bite of these 2 No Better cookies. I have a cinnamon and a chocolate chip. On the front of the package, notice the big indicator here about only 3 grams of net carbs. Net. And on the nutrition label on the back, how many carbs? 26. And in the ingredients list, first is almonds, second is allulose. If you're not familiar with net carbs, you basically look at the total carbohydrates in the food and you're allowed to subtract fiber, which is a carbohydrate, but your body doesn't absorb it. And with allulose now, the way they're looking at it, you get to subtract that too. So there's quite a few carbs in this, but only 3 net carbs, which they would like you to believe those are the only carbs you need to be concerned with. I'm just going to try a piece of this, both because I should not be eating this. The fats in this are so high. But I told my daughter she'd get to try it. So I'm just going to break off a piece and try it, just so I could try something professionally made with allulose. How big a piece am I going to break off? No, small piece. Small piece. Just big enough to dip in the tea. If I'm going to cheat and have a cookie here, I'm going to enjoy it by dipping it in the tea. But first a bite of just plain No Better cookie chocolate chip. Dry, fibery. There were 1 or 2 chocolate chips in that, but they didn't pop with taste either. Boy, for cheating, this is awfully disappointing. I could have had a fresh baked chocolate chip cookie. Try with the tea. Dipping it in the tea always makes it better though. It is better. All right, got 1 little piece left. I'm gonna try it in the sugary tea. Better than dipping it in that tea. But let's try another flavor. even if it's really just an excuse for me to eat some more cookie. This is cinnamon, and up here you can see it is also 3 grams of net carbs. On the back of the package you can see real clearly their calculation of net carbs. Here are the nutrition facts, and as we look down at the ingredient list, first ingredient, allulose. Oh my gosh. I will not eat this later, I will not eat this later, I will not eat this later, I will not eat that later. Okay, so first try a bite of it. Oh, dry and fiber, but without the chocolate chips to sort of break things up and give you hope that when you bite into it, you'll have a flavor pop. It's a treat, I guess, but if I'm going to be eating all those fats, I want to have something fresh baked. So what can I tell you? There's a reason sugar is as popular as it is, because it's so amazingly good, even though it is not good for you. Now, lots of companies have tried different sweeteners over the years to give you the sweet taste without the calories and the downsides of sugar. Allulose is just the latest. It has some good points. It does add sweetness, but it doesn't get the job 100% done. Expect to see it as an ingredient, though, in all kinds of sweetened treats over the next year, so they can pull down the number of net carbs, reduce the calories, and not have to show it as an added sugar. The price has come down since I bought this first bag 6 months ago. This was close to $20. This one's about $15. You can find out more and find this exact one at the link down below this video if you'd like to try it out. I couldn't find any little packs of it as a sweetener, probably because they have to be so big. But $16. This pack of sugar, 4 pounds, was probably about $5. $5, $16. But that's going to be changing soon. There are a number of factories currently being built to produce this. Since they were able to lower the cost of production by, instead of extracting the rare sugars from figs and raisins and so forth, where they can just go to take that corn syrup, throw those enzymes in and produce this inexpensively. There are big factories, I believe, in the US, Mexico, and other countries. This stuff is going to be a major ingredient in so many processed foods in the near future. Just like with the cinnamon cookie, it's the first ingredient listed. They did a study and estimated that if there's widespread adoption of allulose, Americans' caloric intake could be reduced by 10% because they're going to be cutting out a whole bunch of sugar, high fructose corn syrup, I imagine, those sorts of things, and replacing it with this, which could definitely be a good thing. Most of us stand to lose a few calories in our diet, but just think, since this isn't even as sweet as sugar, you saw how much I put in this tea to try to match up with the sweetness of sugar sweetened tea. Just think how many pounds of this you're going to be eating. Well, now you know what's coming, and if you decide a few pounds of this a year isn't something you want to eat, get away from the processed foods, go back to the whole foods. I have a video series about how I managed to lose over 50 pounds in the past year, not by dieting, exercising. I just changed the foods that I ate to eat more healthfully by cutting out processed sugar, well, except for a little bit today, and most refined grains, the processed foods, ate a healthful, nutritious diet, and the weight just seemed to come off. If you'd like to learn more about what worked for me, up here where the pounds of allulose are, I'll put a little link and you can click on that and watch the video series, and I'll see you on the next review.